Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
It's Tuesday, May 27th, and you're tuned to The Grind with Art Grindstone. Good evening, night owls and early scrollers alike. This is the long-running late shift where we filter the day's noise, add a pinch of skepticism, and serve it back with enough caffeine to keep the lights on. Weather: overcast with a chance of geopolitical hot takes. Traffic: only the endless scroll on your phone. Either way, thanks for letting us ride shotgun on your late-night routine. Whether you're clocking out, clocking in, or just pretending to finish that spreadsheet. First up, a cosmic flash so close to Earth, it set off more alarms than a malfunctioning smoke detector. Scientists are scratching their heads and polishing their bunker plans after a surprise gamma-ray burst lit up our neighborhood of the universe. Then we'll take a detour from doom to the downright peculiar, as shiny metal monoliths pop up on remote hillsides and city parks across the globe. Art prank, viral stunt, or open house invitation from ET, we'll weigh the theories and the tinfoil. And finally, we round things out with the crescendo of our 3-part investigation into Solar Cycle 25. Spoiler alert, the sun isn't taking a vacation, and neither should your local utility company. Between cosmic fireworks, mystery sculptures, and solar temper tantrums, you might be tempted to unplug and hide under a blanket. I tried that during last night's power glitch. Turns out you still get Wi-Fi glare through flannel, so stick with me. Informed paranoia is healthier than blind panic. Grab whatever keeps you awake. We'll supply the signal, not the noise. Let's get to it. Our first story starts now. Cosmic alarms do not ring with brass bells. They flash in silent bursts across the sky. Just after midnight on the 8th of May, dishes at the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory in Antarctica and the Fermi Space Telescope both lit up with a blast of high-energy light they could not decode. Astronomers call such jolts gamma-ray bursts, and they usually arrive from galaxies so distant that the light left before our sun was born. This one, however, appears to have flared only a few 100 million miles beyond Pluto, practically on our cosmic doorstep, according to NASA researchers speaking at a press call yesterday. The signal lasted a mere 1 minute, yet it carried more punch than our sun will emit in 10,000 years. A fact that pulled every night owl scientist from bed, setting the tone for our deep dive tonight. Teams from Caltech, the European Southern Observatory, and radio arrays in South Africa swung their antennas to the spot within hours, hoping to catch an afterglow. What they saw instead was a fading blue blot with a strange shape that some jokingly labeled a cow flare. A nickname first used in 2018 when a similar but weaker burst produced an optical outline that looked to playful eyes like a grazing cow. While the label sounds cute, the physics is far from pastoral. Gamma-ray bursts can be born when massive stars collapse into black holes or when neutron stars collide. events that transform matter into pure energy in a cosmic instant. Yet, both scenarios should happen far outside our solar system. Finding such an event practically in our backyard has every theory wobbling. As one researcher at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics told the Associated Press this morning, so what exactly could spark a blast so close and not fry the planets on its way out? One hypothesis, floated by Princeton astrophysicist Dr. Leila Santos, is that a rogue white dwarf star wandered into the Oort cloud, the shell of icy debris that surrounds the sun, and tore apart a heavy comet. The comet's metallic core could have collapsed under the star's gravity, releasing a jet of gamma rays pointed for a heartbeat at Earth. Another camp argues for a magnetar flare. Magnetars are neutron stars with magnetic fields so intense they could wipe credit cards from a quarter of the way to the moon. A flip in such a field can unleash a blast of energy without the dramatic cue of a supernova, leaving almost no visible mess behind. The trouble is, no known magnetar sits that close to us. As Dr. Santos put it, if it is a magnetar, then it is the stealthiest object in the solar neighborhood, a mystery she promises to probe in round-the-clock telescope shifts. Because the event occurred behind the plane of the sun, our satellites took the brunt of the radiation, but only for seconds. Engineers at the European Space Agency say they counted 3 minor outages on low Earth orbit weather probes, each rebooted by built-in safety scripts. The flare did spike our upper atmosphere, creating auroras visible as far south as Kansas, yet no passenger flights reported communications loss, and radiation doses stayed far below airline safety limits. Even so, doomsday blogs lit up faster than the sky, warning of mass extinctions and scorched crops. To that, NASA's head of planetary defense, Lindy Greer, answered plainly, "Had the beam been wide enough and long enough to strip ozone, you and I would not be having this conversation." Still, she admits the incident is a sober reminder that space is not an empty, gentle sea, a note worth keeping in mind as we search for answers tonight. The race is now on to snag every clue before they fade. The James Webb Telescope will point its infrared eye toward the region during its next observation window, hoping to catch cooling debris or telltale dust that betrays a stellar collision. Radio astronomers plan to map the area for whisper-thin shockwaves, while particle physicists scour ice cube data for matching neutrinos, the ghostly particles that could reveal the burst's nuclear roots. If they find a neutrino fingerprint, they can triangulate the exact spot, perhaps even identify the culprit star, nudge by nudge, until theory and evidence finally click. Until then, the phrase cow flare will hang in the air, equal parts mascot and mystery, prodding every late-night thinker to scan the heavens a little longer before bed. And so, dear listeners, we stand beneath a sky that just reminded us how small we are and how curious we can be, all in the same 60-second flash. Scientists detected an unexplained gamma-ray burst almost on our front porch, and they will keep peeling back layers of data until the cosmic culprit is caught. The risks, though dramatic in film scripts, seem slim for now, yet the quest to understand these flares could teach us how to shield future astronauts and satellites, a safeguard worth the midnight oil. Keep your eyes up and your curiosity alive, because space always answers, but only if we ask. Next up, we explore solar windstorms heating our skies.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on chumbacasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at chumbacasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's chumbacasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.
Following that cosmic flash, we turn to solar windstorms. The sun just opened a giant door, and the wind is rushing out. Astronomers call that door a coronal hole, a yawning patch where the solar surface looks dark because hot gas has thinned out, and magnetic field lines snap straight into space. 2 days ago, cameras on the Solar Dynamics Observatory revealed a coronal hole wider than 30 Earths laid side by side, stretching across the sun's northern hemisphere like a charcoal smudge. Right beside it, an active sunspot soared in size, crackling with minor flares. Both features point the same way, straight toward us. So forecasters at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Space Weather Prediction Center moved the geomagnetic needle from watch to warning, setting the stage for a lively week overhead. A coronal hole is not a crater. It is more like a missing roof tile that lets the solar wind howl through. Instead of drifting out at a lazy 200 miles per second, the charged particles gush at almost 800 miles per second, enough to reach Earth in under 2 days. The current stream is dense with electrons and protons energized to strip atoms apart. When that stream slams into our magnetic field, it shakes the field lines like a rug, building electric currents that sizzle through the upper atmosphere. That process, called a geomagnetic storm, is expected to peak late Thursday night, with forecasters predicting a KP index of 7 or even 8. For context, the scale tops out at 9, and anything above 7 can trigger global radio fade-outs, satellite drag, and power grid headaches. As Dr. Tamika Sloan of NOAA put it on a midday briefing, the sun has launched a fastball. We need to keep our catcher's mitts up. Satellites feel the first punch. In low Earth orbit, extra heat swells the air, thickening the layer they must plow through. Operators of the Starlink internet fleet already plan to fire thrusters to climb a little higher and dodge drag. Weather birds stuck with limited fuel will angle their solar panels to cut wind resistance, a move that also shaved battery life during the last big storm in 2021. High above, in geosynchronous orbit, communications platforms face a different threat, a cascade of charged particles that can flip bits in computer memory or zap solar arrays. Mission controllers will switch non-essential payloads to safe mode, like tucking delicate instruments under a blanket until the storm passes. Even the global positioning system may twitch, with positioning errors growing from a foot to a dozen feet. Small on paper, but large if you fly a crop duster or guide a drilling rig. Those ripples in the sky feed our next concern on the ground. Power grids act like unwelcome antennas during big geomagnetic storms. Currents induced in long transmission lines can saturate transformers, making them hum, overheat, or in rare cases fail. Many listeners recall the March 1989 blackout in Quebec, when 6 million people lost electricity for 9 hours after a KP9 storm. Utilities do not want a sequel. Dominion Energy in Virginia and Hydro One in Ontario have both issued statements outlining standby crews, real-time monitoring, and the option to reroute power around vulnerable links. Newer transformers carry special resistors called neutral blockers that bleed off geomagnetic currents, but older units still pepper rural substations. Grid operators will watch space weather charts as closely as meteorologists watch hurricane cones, ready to dial back load or slip into islanded mode, the electrical equivalent of closing a watertight door. According to Reuters, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation believes the network can ride out a K7 event, yet warns that any sudden spike could still trip breakers in high-latitude states where Earth's magnetic field lines dip down like open hooks. For skywatchers, the same turbulence that worries engineers spells beauty. Auroras may spill far beyond their usual haunts, painting lime and violet curtains over Chicago, Dublin, and perhaps even Madrid if the storm overachieves. Photographers hope for a repeat of last November, when a surprise substorm turned the deserts of New Mexico neon green. But the glow is not just a light show. It is a visible sign of energy dumping into our atmosphere. Energy that heats the thermosphere and nudges the International Space Station a few hundred yards lower with each pass. NASA's orbital outpost carries enough propellant for routine boosts, yet the agency prefers to schedule those burns, not scramble them. That is why station managers held a planning call this afternoon, plotting orbit raises for Friday or Saturday, pending the storm's exact strength. Meanwhile, airline crews on polar routes will file flight plans a bit farther south, trading 10 extra minutes in the air for stable radio links, a practice codified after solar storms disrupted high-frequency signals during solar maximum 2 cycles ago. All this activity reminds us that the sun, 93 million miles away, still writes the fine print for life on Earth. We cannot close the door on a coronal hole, but we can prepare. Engineers build with copper mesh and surge arresters. Operators rehearse blackout drills. Researchers launch CubeSats to taste solar wind in real time. And amateurs set alerts on their phones to catch auroras at midnight. In a sense, a geomagnetic storm, automne, is both hazard and teacher, a free laboratory in the sky. If forecasts hold, the coming days will test our vigilance, our technology, and our wonder all at once. So keep an eye on the northern horizon after dusk. And if your phone flickers or your compass drifts a degree, remember that you are feeling the heartbeat of our parent star. Next, we're going terrestrial with global power struggles.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Two rivals, one border, and nuclear shadows loom. When the British Raj folded in 1947, the map of South Asia cracked into two newborn states, India and Pakistan, divided by hurried ink lines and a river of refugees. Within months, the first war over Kashmir erupted, setting a pattern of conflict that historians describe as partition by fire. That war ended in 1949 with the United Nations ceasefire line, but it solved nothing. 3 more wars followed in 1965, 1971, and the brief Kargil clash of 1999, each adding fresh scars without closing the old wound. According to Oxford historian Dr. Farah Qureshi, the partition bequeathed an unfinished homework assignment to every generation since, because the border remained fluid in imagination even when fixed on paper. That lingering grievance frames today's tension, making every fresh incident feel bigger than itself. Fast forward to the present week, and border villages along the line of control report the sharp snap of artillery again. Indian defense officials claim Pakistani troops shelled forward posts near the town of Tangdar late Tuesday night, prompting what they call proportionate retaliation. Islamabad counters that Indian forces fired first, damaging a mosque roof in Neelam Valley. No independent observers can yet confirm either story, but mobile footage of shattered windows and peppered fields now circulates on social media like a fuse in search of powder. At the same time, both capitals trade diplomatic protests over a drone that crashed outside Lahore Sunday morning. New Delhi denies ownership, yet Pakistani investigators display fragments of what they insist is an Indian surveillance craft. Each accusation deepens mistrust, turning the line of control into less a border than a live wire. The wire hums loudest because both nations hold nuclear weapons, each first tested in the summer of 1998. India's arsenal is estimated at around 160 warheads. Pakistan's slightly smaller, but both sides now field missile ranges that can blanket the subcontinent within minutes. The memory of February 2019 hangs heavy. India launched airstrikes in Balakot after a suicide bombing in Pulwama. Pakistan retaliated with its own air raid, and for 48 hours, the world watched 2 nuclear-armed air forces exchange live fire. United States diplomats rushed to broker restraint, a role that may return if the current flare-up escalates. Historian Qureshi notes that the stability-instability paradox is at work. Nuclear weapons can deter full-scale war, yet they also embolden smaller skirmishes, because each side believes the other will avoid crossing the ultimate line. That paradox leaves the region perpetually on the edge, like tightrope walkers who think the net below will always hold. Recent misfires shake that confidence. In March 2022, an unarmed Indian BrahMos missile accidentally streaked 300 miles into Pakistan before crashing near the city of Mianchanu. New Delhi blamed a technical malfunction during routine maintenance. Islamabad filed a protest at the United Nations, calling the incident reckless and alarming. Luckily, the missile carried no warhead and caused no casualties. But for 7 nerve-wracking minutes, Pakistani radar operators tracked an incoming object with unknown payload. Analysts at the Carnegie Endowment warn that such glitches reveal fragile command and control systems on both sides. Systems that must function flawlessly every hour of every day. Add in cyber threats, hot-headed television anchors, and political calendars. India holds national elections next year. Pakistan faces caretaker governments. The margin for error narrows further. When perception moves faster than verification, a false alarm can spiral into live conflict. Yet amid the saber rattling, back channels still whisper. A hotline set up after the Kargil War carries daily situation reports between military directors. India and Pakistan continue an annual exchange of lists of nuclear sites under a 1988 agreement, a small act of transparency that historians hail as vital normalcy. People-to-people ties also persist. Sikh pilgrims crossed Wagah border this week to visit holy sites in Lahore, and traders in Punjab quietly lobby for reopening closed checkpoints that once moved bags of basmati rice instead of rumors. Dr. Qureshi points out that public opinion surveys in both countries show a majority favor dialogue over conflict, even while nationalist rhetoric blares on primetime television. The challenge, she says, is turning that silent majority into a vocal constituency for peace, before a loud minority drags the region toward the abyss. So tonight, as artillery echoes in the Himalayan foothills and diplomats craft sharp-edged notes, the historian's perspective reminds us that past patterns need not dictate future choices. The India-Pakistan fault line is real, but it is not destiny. Leaders can still widen hotlines, invite joint inspections, and revive stalled trade, each step stealing oxygen from the fire. For the rest of us, awareness is the first guardrail. When you hear the next headline about a shell or a drone, remember the long story behind it and the nuclear caution tape wrapped around every move. The difference between a flash in the hills and a flash in the sky is only a few misread signals apart, a fact worth keeping in view as the night deepens. Up next, hear how energy conflicts are reshaping Europe. But
it is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
lights on, politics off. That is the fight across Europe tonight. For decades, the continent treated natural gas as a boring utility, a blue flame humming under every kettle. That routine cracked when tanks rolled into Ukraine in February 2022 and Moscow squeezed its pipelines. At the peak of the crisis, roughly 40% of Europe's pipeline gas vanished, and wholesale prices spiked above €300 per megawatt hour, levels that gutted factories from Slovakia to Spain. Leaders scrambled for substitutes, ordering ships loaded with liquefied gas from Qatar, the United States, and Nigeria, while households hunted for electric blankets. Berlin reopened coal plants it once condemned. Rome floated windfall taxes on energy giants. Warsaw fast-tracked nuclear tenders. Not since the oil shocks of the 1970s has energy held such sway over foreign policy, a reality that frames tonight's look at the new front lines of power, both political and literal. Those lines now snake across seas and borders like nervous veins. Norway's fields in the North Sea pump at record rates, while the Baltic pipe carries that gas south into Poland. Italy courts Algeria and Libya, offering port projects in return for extra molecules. Farther east, Azerbaijan's Trans-Adriatic pipeline has become a prized umbilical cord, feeding Greece and the Balkans. Yet every new route sparks its own tension. Ankara eyes Eastern Mediterranean gas and clashes with Athens over drilling rights. Paris and Madrid debate who pays for a hydrogen corridor under the Pyrenees. Add in the unsolved sabotage of the Nord Stream lines last September, and you hear diplomats whisper the phrase, "energy wars," without irony. In Brussels, officials speak of strategic autonomy, which really means keeping the lights on without asking the Kremlin. That replumbing of supply is urgent, but another danger lurks where copper wires meet computer code, leading us directly into the cyber arena. Electric grids once relied on analog switches and on-site engineers. Now they breathe through fiber optic veins and software brains. Artificial intelligence, or AI, predicts demand, reroutes power, and even decides when to spin up batteries. Efficiency is the upside, but every added sensor is a new door for intruders. The European Union Agency for Cybersecurity warns that hostile states and criminal gangs are training machine learning algorithms to probe grid networks faster than humans can patch them. Ukraine felt a dress rehearsal in December 2015 when hackers remotely tripped breakers and darkened 250,000 homes. 7 years later, during the first week of the Russian invasion, another malware strain called Indestroyer 2 tried and narrowly failed to repeat the stunt. European grids avoided similar strikes only because operators yanked systems offline and worked from printed checklists. Analysts at NATO's Cooperative Cyber Defense Center say attackers now feed real-time grid data into artificial intelligence models, testing exploit chains in digital twins before releasing them on live control rooms. That melding of brains and bytes sets up the most invisible front line of all. Picture a cold January night. Wind in the North Sea calms, solar arrays sleep under snow, and grid software starts a delicate shuffle, importing French nuclear power, tapping Danish batteries, trimming Italian industrial loads. A malicious algorithm hidden in that dance could falsify readings, convincing operators that voltage is stable while it slowly unbalances the network. Transformers overheat, breakers trip in cascade, and within minutes, office towers in Frankfurt flicker out while trams stall in Milan. Hospitals switch to diesel, mobile signals wobble, and social media floods with rumors. Because Europe's high-voltage system is tightly meshed, a blackout in one region can travel like a falling domino across borders. The director of Germany's Federal Office for Information Security recently compared such an attack to a silent pandemic that spreads along invisible lines rather than airport gates. Layer on geopolitical tension, say a gas cutoff or pipeline incident, and the incentive for a hostile actor to launch a digital strike climbs sharply. This convergence of energy dependency and cyber vulnerability is what security scholars now call hybrid conflict, and it blurs the boundary between keyboard and battlefield. Europe is racing to thicken its defenses, but the patchwork shows. Nations run cyber ranges where engineers practice saving a virtual grid from phantom hackers. The new Cyber Resilience Act will require manufacturers to offer at least 5 years of security updates for industrial hardware. Utilities invest in so-called dark start kits, diesel generators, satellite phones, and manual switches that can revive a dead network without outside help. Yet a report by Reuters finds that many municipal utilities still operate legacy software, no longer supported by vendors, and a shortage of skilled defenders leaves thousands of vacancies unfilled. Some see salvation in diversification. Offshore wind farms, rooftop solar, and home batteries that create millions of tiny power plants harder to knock out at once. Others bet on small modular reactors or green hydrogen stored in salt caverns. Whatever the mix, the central lesson is stark. Energy security now demands both pipelines and passwords, diplomacy and motherboard solder, trade deals and threat models. Europe's ability to keep the lights burning will hinge on how well it weaves those threads before the next winter bite or the next line of malicious code. Coming up, we uncover unexplained mysteries and tech upheavals. Metal slabs rise where logic sleeps. It began in late November 2020 when wildlife biologists tracking bighorn sheep in the red canyons of Utah spotted a mirror-bright pillar jutting from the sandstone, a geometry so crisp it looked copied from a dream. Days later, hikers in Romania found an identical shard on a windswept hill near the fortress of Piatra Neamț. Before reporters could fly out, a third gleamed on a California mountaintop overlooking the glitter of Los Angeles. Within weeks, the count leapt across borders, one in the Netherlands beside a frozen lake, another beside a Cornish beach, one more at the base of Australia's Table Mountain. Social media stitched them into a single timeline, titling the slides Global Monolith Migration, and every new post sharpened the mystery. Sightings came faster than debunks, suggesting a game of large-scale whack-a-mole and setting the stage for tonight's closer examination of these silent tourists. The latest round arrived this spring, proving the fad, or plot depending on your taste, has stamina. Hikers climbing Cadair Idris in Wales found a 2-meter-high stainless block that reflected green valleys on one face and storm clouds on the other. Park rangers in Sao Paulo's Atlantic rainforest photographed a taller version perched beside a waterfall, its base wedged between mossy roots like an alien bookmark. Even the Mongolian steppe, empty for miles, now hosts a narrow shard that throws sunrise like a laser across the grass. Local officials in each spot swear the terrain was checked by patrols only days before, meaning the installations must have arrived under cover of night or with lightning speed. Drone footage from Wales shows no tractor trails, no footprints wider than a single boot, and no cement foundation, just a slot dug into loam, the slab balanced by hidden brackets. Investigators tally at least 34 confirmed monoliths on 5 continents, plus blurred photos of possible cousins in Turkey and South Africa, a head-spinning roll call that invites serious guesses and wild leaps in equal measure. Artists were first out of the gate with plausible claims. Some point to the late minimalist sculptor John McCracken, who filled galleries with shiny planks and schizoid colors. His estate, however, disavows any sanctioned tribute beyond museum walls. An anonymous collective calling itself the most famous artist told Wired magazine that they fabricated at least 3 of the early pillars and sold copies for $45,000 apiece, offering receipts but no shipping logs. Environmental artist Lotte van Roosendaal, whose past work includes mirrored cubes in Dutch wetlands, thinks copycats now outnumber the originators 10-1. She calls the trend flash mob land art, a distributed project where anyone with sheet metal and a van can join. Structural engineers note that most monoliths are light-gauge steel welded around a plywood core, strong enough to stand but easy to cart away. Indeed, many vanish within days, sometimes dismantled by authorities for safety, sometimes hauled off by souvenir hunters, sometimes simply missing at dawn as mysteriously as they arrived. That revolving door of creation and erasure invites a different set of storytellers eager to fill the gaps. Cue the conspiracy chorus. Fans of Arthur C. Clarke see tributes to the Obsidian Sentinel in 2001, A Space Odyssey. And they rank each pillar by cinematic accuracy, right down to ratio dimensions. The more imaginative corners of TikTok claim the stainless surfaces scramble compasses, though hikers armed with smartphone apps show the needle steady as ever. A late-night podcast even floated the idea that monoliths are beacons mapping weak spots in Earth's magnetic field for what it calls a probing civilization. Scientists smile at that one. Stainless steel is hardly exotic technology, and no radiation spikes accompany the slabs. Still, the allure of contact remains potent. According to a YouGov poll last month, 1 in 8 Europeans surveyed said they would not rule out extraterrestrial involvement. Psychologists explain the attraction as pandemic-era escapism. After months of stress, a cosmic prank feels lighter than another human headline. Yet the mystique endures precisely because proofs are scarce, leaving room for whispers that pass from hikers to hashtags, and from hashtags into dinner table lore, propelling the cycle ever forward. Underlying that cycle is an unspoken contract between maker and witness. Leave no plaque, request no ticket, spark maximum wonder per square foot. In a world tracked by satellite, the monoliths restore a whiff of frontier, teaching us that surprise can still slip through the net. Whether crafted by welders in a backyard or dropped from a craft we dare not name, each slab functions as a blank page where viewers scrawl their own beliefs. Art, prank, prophecy, hoax, hope. Museums may one day host a few salvaged pillars under controlled light, but the better gallery is the wild slope where fog and sun redraw the piece each hour. And so the count may climb, the metals may vary, the theories may spiral, but the core lesson sticks. Mystery travels well when packaged in simple shapes. Next, journey with us beneath Vancouver Island.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Gold whispers beneath coastal forests. After monoliths, we delve into hidden tunnels and gold rush secrets. The story begins with a roll of brittle parchment unboxed last month at the Royal British Columbia Museum. Curators expected survey notes, but the faded lines revealed a spiderweb of shafts under the seaside town of Cumberland on Vancouver Island. Ink arrows point toward the Comox Valley Hills, while tidy script reads escape route and vault. The map carries the date 1858. The first summer headlines screamed gold along the Fraser. Historians long suspected that miners bored beyond riverbeds, yet this sheet marks the most detailed subterranean diagram found so far, persuading archaeologist Dr. Jasper Liao to lead a fresh dig. He calls the discovery a backstage pass to a forgotten theater, and he is already packing ground-penetrating radar, portable LiDAR, and rubber boots for an expedition that could rewrite island lore. Local legends have aired for generations around wood stoves and campfires. Elders of the Comox First Nation speak of distant stamping mills that thudded day and night, then fell silent without reason, leaving holes that breathed cold air like sleeping bears. Chinese workers, barred from many claims on the mainland, are said to have tunneled sideways beneath company lines, carrying sacks of pay dirt to hidden crushers. Fishermen tell of a priest who stashed parish donations underground during a smallpox scare, then died before marking the spot above ground. Even the town bakery joins the chorus. A hinge in its cellar floor supposedly lifts to a narrow shaft that once linked smugglers to the harbor. Most claims lack proof, yet every rainy season, sinkholes open beside trails, exposing timbered walls and rusted rails, hints that someone indeed labored below the ferns. The new map may finally braid these tales into verifiable history, a prospect that has residents split between curiosity and caution. Dr. Liao's team hired a trio of cavers from nearby Nanaimo to scout the first entrance. They lowered a camera down a ventilation pipe no wider than a milk jug and found a brick chamber 6 meters below, dry as parchment and braced with cedar beams, untouched by rot. On the floor lay an iron lamp, its wick still curled like a question mark. A side passage vanished into darkness, but its roof bore pick marks that matched the era's hand tools. If the tunnel network is as vast as the map suggests, it might intersect abandoned coal seams that pepper the island, raising the danger of toxic gases. That is why Liao coordinates with the Provincial Mine Safety Office and carries canaries of the 21st century kind, digital sensors that beep at the scent of methane. The plan is methodical: scan, probe, shore up, then map each meter in 3-dimensional detail before opening any sealed door. We aim to recover stories, not casualties, he quips during a CBC interview, underscoring the razor-thin line between adventure and accident. Treasure chatter, naturally, flares faster than academic caution. Metal detector hobbyists from as far as Alberta have inquired about permits, hoping to unearth Chinese silver tails or Hudson's Bay Company trade tokens. Social media buzz claims the tunnels hide a lost payroll worth $4 million modern dollars, based on a newspaper clipping from 1891 that described a mule train robbed en route to Nanaimo. Economists temper the excitement, noting that prospectors often inflated shipment values as much as nugget weights. Still, the mere hint of hidden wealth is enough to stir hotel bookings and candlelight walking tours. Cumberland's mayor welcomes visitors, but warns that unauthorized digging in heritage sites carries hefty fines. Rangers now patrol trailheads at dawn, and Liao's crew posts bright signs urging onlookers to leave fines in place, let science speak first. The tug-of-war between preservation and profit is as old as the gold rush itself, echoing in every clink of a shovel. Yet the bigger prize may be cultural rather than monetary. If tunnels built by Chinese laborers surface, they could illuminate a chapter of exclusion and resilience often overshadowed by more famous boomtown tales. Liao hopes to recover everyday objects, porcelain bowls, opium tins, prayer slips, that flesh out lives lived far from official ledgers. The team also invites Comox representatives to co-author findings, recognizing that the island's bedrock holds stories older than frontier fever. In this way, a dusty map might bridge communities that once eyed each other across picket lines of race and law. Imagine a future museum wing where school children walk a recreated drift, lanterns in hand, hearing both Cantonese folk songs and Kwakwala legends echoing off the walls. That vision gives the expedition weight beyond glitter, reminding us that gold is not the only treasure worth unearthing. For now, the entrance remains sealed behind caution tape. Instruments hum, and anticipation thickens like morning fog over the strait. In the coming weeks, as radar waves ripple through rock and timber, we may learn whether the shadows under Vancouver Island hide a bank vault, a burial site, or simply the sweat of dreamers chasing luck. Whatever emerges, the tunnels promise to turn legend into data, speculation into measured story, and as every good tale teaches, truth gained from the depths often reframes the surface we thought we knew. Soon, we'll examine China's bid for AI chip supremacy. Now shifting to technology, we spotlight China's AI chip advances. Silicon battlegrounds shape tomorrow's power. For most of the past decade, American giant Nvidia wrote the rulebook on artificial intelligence hardware. Its graphics processors, first built for video games, now train language models, drive cars, and rank oil deposits, all while raking in record profit. But Washington's export curbs, announced in October 2022 and tightened this year, restrict advanced Nvidia parts from entering Chinese data centers. Beijing answered by pouring subsidies, tax breaks, and venture money into domestic startups, declaring chip self-reliance a strategic imperative. According to Reuters, public and private funds worth roughly $180 billion have been earmarked for semiconductor projects since 2019, from wafer plants in Anhui to research parks in Shenzhen. That financial fire hose signals ambition, but the real test is performance, which brings us to the latest benchmark numbers, the heartbeat of any chip race. Take Biren Technologies BR100 accelerator, fabricated on a 7-nanometer process and unveiled in Shanghai last month. Independent testers at the Chinese Academy of Sciences fed it the ResNet 50 image recognition task, an industry sprint almost every vendor runs. The Biren chip processed 11,000 images per second at a power draw of 300 watts, neatly matching Nvidia's A100 board, shipped in 2020. Meanwhile, Huawei flaunts its Ascend 910, etched in the same 7-nanometer silicon, but tuned for natural language workloads. A suite called BERT Base, which measures how fast a processor can refine a language model, finished in 80 minutes on a cluster of 64 Ascend cards, shaving a third off Huawei's own record from last year. Even veteran player Cambrican shows gains. Its new Xiyuan 900 scored 15% higher than its predecessor on graph neural tasks while using the same electricity. None of these chips yet reach the stratospheric heights of Nvidia's latest H100, but the gap measured in teraflops, trillions of floating point operations per second, has narrowed from nearly double to less than 20%. An eye-catching climb that frames the supply chain question ahead. Performance alone does not guarantee independence. China's fab capacity still leans on imported lithography tools, photoresist chemicals, and design software. Yet the plumbing is changing. Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, known as SMIC, surprised outsiders by taping out 7-nanometer wafers on equipment not approved for that node, a feat confirmed by Tech Insights when they dissected a crypto mining chip last fall. SMIC now plans a 5-nanometer pilot line in Shanghai by early 2025, though analysts debate whether the company can maintain yield without extreme ultraviolet tools barred by Dutch and American rules. On the packaging front, Jiangsu's Tongfu Microelectronics has opened an advanced 2.5D integration plant capable of stacking high-bandwidth memory on logic dies, a technique once exclusive to Taiwan and South Korea. Put together, these moves sketch a parallel highway for China's chip ambitions, even if some on-ramps remain under construction, leading us into the geopolitical lane of the story. Export controls act as speed bumps, and their height keeps rising. In August, Washington barred Nvidia from selling even the watered-down A800 model to Chinese cloud giants once the chip's network performance crosses a fresh threshold. The knock-on effect is ironic. By capping imports, the United States may have accelerated China's sprint toward homegrown solutions. Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent are already test-driving Biren and Ascend boards in pilot clusters that train recommendation engines for e-commerce and short video apps. According to Nikkei Asia, internal metrics show less than 10% slowdown compared with forbidden silicon, while purchase costs drop sharply due to state incentives. Engineers admit software maturity lags, drivers crash, and compilers lack some features. Still, open-source communities on Git, China's GitHub analog, add patches daily, echoing the Linux rise 2 decades ago. As tools mature, the calculus changes for any firm, weighing foreign procurement against domestic pride, which feeds directly into the next wave of investment. Beijing's blueprint reaches beyond data centers. Edge AI chips now power cameras in Shenzhen subway stations, speech translators on bullet trains, and rice-picking robots in Hunan paddies. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology wants half of all smart car processors sold in China to be produced locally by 2026. To hit that mark, startups like Black Sesame and Horizon Robotics develop automotive systems on a chip that fuse video, radar, and LiDAR in real time. Their latest prototypes, built on 28-nanometer nodes, considered mature by global standards, still crunch 60 trillion operations per second while sipping 10 watts, fine for dashboards and driver assistance. Layer on massive domestic demand, over 20 million new cars each year, and these firms get a living laboratory to iterate hardware rapidly, closing knowledge gaps even without the very latest fabs. The strategy mirrors how Chinese solar panel makers conquered global share a decade ago. Dominate the home market, scale up, then undercut abroad. Whether chips follow that arc depends on patent battles, export licenses, and the never-ending chase for smaller transistors. A chase we will keep tracking. For investors and engineers outside China, the lesson is clear. The era of Nvidia's unchallenged reign is ending, replaced by a multipolar chip world where political borders shape circuit paths as much as physics does. If Biren or Huawei crosses the 20% performance gap next year, American firms may face a binary choice: lobby harder to widen export fences, or innovate fast enough to stay ahead despite leakage. Either way, machine learning labs from Berlin to Bangalore will watch benchmarks with fresh attention, because diversity in hardware often sparks creativity in algorithms. A rising tide of silicon could lift AI to new heights, or fragment standards and slow collaboration. The outcome hinges on diplomacy as much as on die size, bringing us back to the broader interplay of science and statecraft that colors this entire hour. Stay tuned for our deep investigation into Solar Cycle 25.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Sun on the rise, grid on the edge. When astronomers gathered at the Space Weather Prediction Center in Boulder 3 years ago, they expected Solar Cycle 25 to be a mild reprise of the sleepy decade that came before. The official forecast set a peak monthly sunspot number around 115, gentle by historical yardsticks. Fast forward to the present, and the sun has blown through that ceiling far ahead of schedule, chalking up 180 sunspots in June alone, reports NASA. Solar physicist Dr. Lisa Upton calls it a rowdy star waking from a nap. And the commotion is not just academic. Every dark speck on that blazing disk marks a magnetic knot capable of flinging coronal mass ejections, great clouds of charged particles straight toward Earth. Those clouds ride the solar wind at speeds topping 2 million kilometers per hour, rattling our planet's magnetic shield and, in severe cases, the wires that carry everyday life. That is why the unexpected vigor of Solar Cycle 25 now dominates lab meetings and utility boardrooms alike, setting the stage for our 3-part investigation. First, the numbers. The Royal Observatory of Belgium, which keeps the world's canonical sunspot count, notes that monthly activity is tracking about 40% higher than the median forecast issued in 2019. Such a gap may sound arcane, yet history teaches caution. In March 1989, a pulse of solar plasma crashed into Earth's magnetosphere and tripped protective relays on the Hydro-Quebec grid. Within 90 seconds, 6 million Canadians lost power. Elevators halted, radiology labs went silent, and the Montreal subway froze in place. Engineers later traced the blackout to geomagnetically induced currents, slow, sneaky flows that slipped into long transmission lines and overloaded step-down transformers. Those transformers took months to rebuild. Today, the North American grid is even more interconnected, stretching 18,000 kilometers from Baja California to Nova Scotia. Redundant circuits and better forecasting help, but the weak link remains. Copper conducts whether you want it to or not, a fact that haunts utility executives watching sunspot charts climb. Navigation satellites feel the heat too. Global Positioning System receivers rely on stable signals passing through the ionosphere, a high layer of charged gas wrapped around Earth. Solar storms churn that layer like boiling water, bending radio waves into corkscrews. During a moderate storm last February, surveyors in Finland reported positional errors of up to 2 meters, enough to misalign precision agriculture machines and cause autonomous snowplows at Helsinki Airport to drift off course. Airlines responded by rerouting polar flights to lower latitudes, adding fuel costs and new carbon. even cell towers, lean on timing pulses from GPS clocks. If those pulses slip, data packets pile up like cars at a broken traffic light. The European Union's Galileo constellation offers redundancy, but it rides the same turbulent sky. A blistering storm could jam multiple bands at once, transforming a convenience glitch into a continent-scale logistics headache, a risk civil aviation regulators now model in weekly drills. Then there is the quiet backbone of digital commerce, undersea fiber optic cables. Light itself is immune to geomagnetic chaos, yet the repeaters that boost that light every 60 kilometers run on metallic power feeds that act like giant antennas. Research published this spring by the University of California, Berkeley, simulated a Carrington-class storm, a reference to the monster flare of 1859, and found that induced currents could exceed the safety margin of 45% of Atlantic crossing links. A single failed repeater would not snap the web, but cascading faults could shove traffic onto crowded satellite routes, slowing everything from stock trades to hospital record transfers. Cloud providers mirror data on multiple continents, yet latency matters. A medical scan waiting seconds longer could delay a stroke diagnosis. That chain from sunspot to server rack underscores why Silicon Valley is tuning into daily flux readings posted from observatories in New Mexico and Tenerife, weaving space weather alerts into load balancing algorithms alongside wildfire warnings and earthquake P waves. Governments are responding, though unevenly. The United States passed the Promoting Research and Observations of Space Weather to Improve the Forecasting of Tomorrow Act, mercifully called the ProSwift Act, in 2020. It funds new satellites like Space Weather Follow-On L1, slated to park 1 million miles sunward and watch eruptions in real time. Europe's Solar Orbiter, launched earlier that same year, now sends high-resolution movies of magnetic filaments whipping across the solar surface, data that feed machine learning models able to predict flare severity hours in advance. Yet protective hardware lags behind software insight. Only a handful of North American transformers have neutral ground resistors installed to block geomagnetically induced currents, and fitting the rest could take a decade. Airlines train crews to handle radio blackouts, but rural hospitals rarely own satellite phones. Cybersecurity experts point out an ironic twist. As grids adopt smarter sensors to withstand solar surges, those sensors themselves widen the attack surface for hackers, meaning we trade one vulnerability for a hybrid of two. Choices made during the next few years, what to shield, what to trust, what to risk, will ripple through economies just as surely as any charged particle from the sun. All of which brings us to the central question of this series. Are we calibrating our defenses to yesterday's forecasts while the star overhead writes a new playbook? Part 1 has laid out the mounting evidence that solar cycle 25 is stronger, sooner, and more mischievous than projected. Parts 2 and 3 will dig into competing theories for why forecasts miss the mark, from deep core magnetic reversals to the influence of Jupiter's orbit, and we will examine the social, economic, and even psychological toll of living under a sky that occasionally hurls electromagnetic haymakers. Until then, remember that every sunset you admire is also a data point. One more brushstroke on a dynamic canvas we are only beginning to interpret. In Part 2, we'll explore speculations and the potential consequences of relentless solar storms.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on chumbacasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at chumbacasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's chumbacasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.
Imagine midnight cities gone dark under a stormy, silent sky. Building on Part 1's intrigue, we explore worst-case scenarios by starting with a real-world jolt. The twin X-class solar flares of May 2025, classified X4.3 and X6.9, they were the largest eruptions since the Halloween storms of 2003. Though magnetically aimed just off-center, the blasts still rattled auroras down to Colorado and shorted a rail signal relay outside Oslo. Now tilt the same physics a few degrees, and the picture sharpens. An X20 flare, the size of the historic Carrington event of 1859, would launch a coronal mass ejection as wide as the sun itself, packing perhaps 10 billion tons of plasma. Carried by a high-speed solar wind, that cloud could cross the 93 million kilometer gulf in under 18 hours. Modern observatories would see it coming, yet warning is not prevention, and the clock would tick far faster than many grids can adjust. Scientists model the impact by tracing how those charged particles squeeze Earth's magnetosphere, inducing electrical currents in any conductor longer than a few dozen kilometers. The bigger the loop, the stronger the surge. North America's eastern interconnection sprawls like a copper spiderweb over 160,000 kilometers, nearly ideal for harvesting geomagnetically induced currents. A simulation run in April by the Electric Power Research Institute paints a sobering chain reaction. Surge waves enter long transmission lines, pushing a slow but relentless direct current through transformer cores, driving them into magnetic saturation. Saturated steel heats unevenly, warping windings until insulation chars. Protective relays may trip, but they cannot reverse the damage. The iron has already lost its temper, as engineers say. During the 1998 Quebec ice storm, crews rewound 7 transformers in 3 months. Under a Carrington-class load, a new study in the journal Space Weather estimates at least 500 extra high-voltage units would suffer permanent injury across the United States and Canada alone, leaving no quick path to revival because each behemoth weighs 400 tons and takes up to 2 years to custom build. One broken transformer knocks out a corridor, but several broken in sequence shred the fabric of the grid. Picture it. Lights flicker from Maine to Miami before collapsing in waves. Gas stations need electric pumps to dispense fuel, so emergency crews scrounge diesel from half-empty tanks. Water utilities rely on lift stations. Without them, pressure falls and taps run dry. Cell towers stay alive on batteries for 8 hours, then fall silent. Data centers spin on backup generators, yet many hold fuel for only 48 hours, because just-in-time delivery keeps costs low. Financial trades pause first, then medical billing, then the supply chains for insulin and infant formula. Human behavior bends. Nights become darker, streets quieter, and rumors louder. Sociologists who studied Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria warn that trust erodes faster than infrastructure. People skip work to guard homes. local radio pivots from music to makeshift logistics, and black market diesel rises to $50 a gallon. Multiply that across an entire continent for weeks, perhaps months, and the outage becomes a societal experiment few leaders wish to supervise. As the blackout settles, the hunt for spare transformers starts. Only a handful of factories worldwide can forge the massive high-grade steel cores, and many sit in South Korea, Germany, and India, nations that may be nursing their own grid wounds under the same solar barrage. Airlifting is out. Each unit exceeds the payload of a C-5 Galaxy cargo plane. Sea routes demand special deck space, port cranes, and months of customs paperwork. Even if production lines run non-stop, analysts at Bloomberg NEF estimate the United States could replace no more than 50 units per year under current logistics. That pace stretches full recovery into the next solar minimum, leaving regional islands of power to ration voltage like water in a drought. Economists peg the total cost of a year-long continental outage at up to $7.5 trillion, roughly one-third of American annual output. Yet money measures only the visible edge. The real ledger includes perishable livelihoods, deferred surgeries, and years of educational loss for a generation of students learning by candlelight. Such stakes turn abstract magnetism into a palpable menace that policymakers can no longer park in academic journals. Critics might call this scenario alarmist, noting that utilities have weathered storms before, and that forecasting tools now provide a window of hours, even days. True, but the core puzzle remains. Can human systems ramp down faster than solar physics ramps up? May's X-class flares, though weaker than Carrington, already triggered minor outages after only minutes of warning. Stretch that shock into a series, 3, 4, maybe 5 coronal mass ejections in quick succession, a phenomenon known as a solar cannonade, and each hit would arrive when the magnetosphere is still vibrating from the last. Layered stresses degrade hardware like repeated bends weaken a paperclip, making failure not a question of if, but when. Add climate-driven heat waves that push summer demand toward record peaks, and the margin for error thins to a razor. In short, the worst-case tape reels are not fiction. They follow equations we understand and infrastructure gaps we can map, which is why the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission quietly updated contingency guidelines this July, urging utilities to prepare for multi-day geomagnetic disturbances of extreme category. In Part 3, we will pivot from doom to defense, examining novel transformer designs that shrug off direct current, grid-splitting tactics that isolate trouble before it cascades, and the politics of stockpiling strategic hardware the same way we stockpile crude oil. We will also hear from community planners who treat solar storms as social as much as electrical events, knitting neighborhood-level resilience networks aimed at filling the seams national grids might miss. Solutions exist. The challenge is marshaling willpower before the sun writes the next chapter. For now, let the models burn in your memory like an eerie aurora stretched across the night, a reminder that space weather is not distant. It pulses through every socket in your home. In Part 3, we'll uncover solutions and grid protection strategies.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Stormproofing the Wires starts tonight. For 2 episodes, we watched the sun flex and the grid tremble. Now we pivot from fear to fix. Scientists and engineers agree that no silver bullet exists, but a cartridge belt of smaller measures can blunt even a Carrington-class blow. Front of the line are GIC blocking capacitors, palm-sized devices wired between transmission lines and transformer neutrals to stop direct current from sneaking into steel cores. Hydro-Quebec has used early versions since 1995, and field data show a 95% drop in harmful current during moderate storms. Newer solid-state models attach like Lego bricks, self-tune as geomagnetic fields shift, and cost about $200,000 per installation, less than rebuilding a single fried transformer. Scale that across 10,000 vulnerable substations in North America, and the price tag approaches $2 billion. A steep sum until you stack it against the $7.5 trillion fallout we outlined last night. Blocking capacitors handle the brute physics, but they are only the opening act, which leads us to smarter grid choreography. Enter real-time situational awareness. Grid operators already watch voltage readouts, but often on 5-minute refresh cycles, an eternity when solar shockwaves strike. A NASA-led pilot in Minnesota now streams magnetometer data every 10 seconds into an AI model that flags hotspots and suggests load-shedding routes in under half a minute. During the May flares of 2025, the system cut power to a single paper mill for 40 minutes instead of 3 counties for 6 hours. Similar software rolls out next spring in New Zealand, a nation laced with long coastal lines prone to induced currents. Pair these analytics with dynamic line ratings, sensors that tell operators how much current each wire can truly handle in real conditions, and you gain headroom to reroute electricity around stressed sections like blood detouring through capillaries. Yet even elegant code needs a canvas, which brings us to the grid topology debate swirling in utility conferences. Traditional networks favor wide interconnected webs for efficiency, but resilience often lives in islands. Microgrids built around hospitals, data centers, or entire neighborhoods can decouple when the main spine falters, running on local solar, batteries, or small gas turbines. California's Blue Lake Rancheria, a tribal community near Eureka, tested the idea during wildfire outages in 2019, keeping pharmacies cold and ATMs online while nearby towns went dark. Scaling that lesson, New York City's latest climate plan calls for 100 microgrid zones by 2030, each capable of 3 days autonomous power. Engineers dub this architecture fracture without failure. The grid cracks along designed seams rather than shattering at random, reducing the domino effect described in Part 2. Hardware plus software plus topology form the technical tripod of resilience, yet none stands without policy cement, a subject now heating capital corridors. Legislators propose nationwide grid resilience standards, echoing the way building codes evolved after the 1933 Long Beach earthquake. One bipartisan bill would require utilities to audit geomagnetic risks every 2 years. Install GIC blockers on at least 20% of key transformers by 2028 and stockpile strategic spares in regional depots overseen by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Funding would come from a quarter-cent surcharge on interstate electricity sales, translating to about $12 per household each year, a cup of coffee per month for solar peace of mind. Opposition notes that rural cooperatives already face thin margins, but advocates counter that rural lines often span the longest distances and thus bear higher risk. Meanwhile, misinfo swirls online, claiming solar storms are hoaxes to justify rate hikes. The National Academy of Sciences now publishes plain language Q&A sheets debunking such myths, a reminder that resilience is also a battle for public trust, a theme our final segment will amplify. Yet policy and hardware still hinge on human hands, ready when the sky glows green. Community drills matter. Wisconsin just practiced a powerless weekend, where families learned to sanitize water without electric pumps, and local ham radio clubs relayed emergency messages across the state. Cities are mapping resilience hubs, libraries or churches outfitted with solar microgrids, satellite internet, and medical refrigerators to anchor neighborhoods during prolonged outages. Even simple steps count. Surge-protected power strips for home routers, Faraday bag storage for airport navigation backups, and mutual aid agreements that let line crews cross state borders without fresh paperwork. Layer these civic fibers atop the technical mesh, and you weave a safety net broad enough to catch more than electrons. You catch people. Link the pieces and the takeaway emerges. We possess the technology, the money, and the foresight to tame Solar Cycle 25. But urgency must outrun complacency. Blocking capacitors quiet the current. Real-time analytics read the sky. Microgrids contain the blast, and policies lock the puzzle into place. The sun will not wait for committee edits. Yet neither will the engineers, scientists, and citizens already soldering, coding, and training toward a brighter night. The roadmap is drawn. The choice now is motion or myth. Thanks for watching. Join us tomorrow for more top news and next-level investigations. All right, friends, let's ease this spacecraft back to its cradle. From that barn-sized burst of gamma light nicknamed a cow flare, to the sun's own unruly fireworks in Cycle 25, tonight felt like a cosmic carnival, with occasional lightning bolts aimed straight at our fragile circuits. We dodged solar winds, peeked over the nuclear flashpoint between India and Pakistan, and traced blackouts that could be written by an algorithm with attitude. If your pulse quickened, good, it means you're still plugged in. Then we packed a suitcase for the weird. Metallic monoliths sprouting like mushrooms, secret tunnels under Vancouver Island whispering gold rush loot, and China's homegrown silicon sharpening its teeth for the global chip fight. Finally, we built a sandbag wall around the grid before the sun decides to body slam it. 3 solid chapters of science, strategy, and a dash of doom. Remember, doom is just possibility wearing dramatic lighting. Before we shut the lid, a quick personal note. When we started the grind years ago, the scariest tech on my desk was a fax machine. Tonight we talked about AI that can black out a continent and a sun that could turn our grids to kindling. Progress, huh? I keep a little hourglass on set, wooden frame, crimson sand. Every time we cover a threat to our modern lifelines, I flip it and remind myself, civilizations fall when they confuse convenience for permanence. The grains are running, but they haven't emptied yet, and shows like this exist to keep you, me, and the decision-makers awake while we still have room to act. So keep your questions sharp, your backups handy, and your sense of wonder unbreakable. You could have been asleep, scrolling, or binging something forgettable. Instead, you spent the late shift with us, and that means the world. Thank you for every listen, every midnight message, every skeptical eyebrow you raise when the headlines blink red. If you like the ride, rate the show, drop a comment, or jam that subscribe button until it squeaks. We read them all, sometimes by flashlight when the power flickers. Need more fuel between episodes? Unexplained.co is the mothership. All our news briefings, long-form investigations, live streams, and the archives stretching back to my first gray hair, right there, free of paywalls and full of rabbit holes. Tomorrow night, we're chasing a story that starts with a single missing minute in an airport security log and ends halfway around the world. Bring snacks and a theory. Until then, keep questioning the obvious. Good night.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.